Maryam and Janat using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and share your favorite moments of today's event on social media using hashtag HackergalDay. I'd like to kick off our session by introducing our guest developer, Miriam Kaka. Maryam is a developer and exuberant tech advocate based in Ottawa, Ontario. She found a passion for development somewhat by accident, and she hopes to help others learn more about the amazing world of tech and computing. Currently, she works at Shopify as a back-end developer. And outside of work, she can be found working on a crafting project. May it be painting, knitting, crocheting, you name it, reading, or playing video games. She's here today to answer all your burning questions in an Ask Me Anything session. So this means anything is on the table, anything you've ever wanted to know about working in tech and being a developer. So please go ahead and start submitting all your questions using the Q&A function. We'll try our best to get to all your questions. And yeah, Miriam, why don't we start by you telling us what motivated you to start a career in tech?
Sure. I feel like that's really a hard one to pin down for me because I've always been like super interested in computers and tinkering and like playing around with things. I always found like trying to figure out how things worked and trying to figure out how systems worked or like little things functioned. I always found that super interesting, and that's always been sort of like a theme in my life. And yeah, I got into computing somewhat by accident. This was, I think, in middle school. I was on a bus going to school, and I don't know, complaining about some assignment or another, and like talking about how hard it was. And there was a guy on our school bus who was in grade 12 doing AP computer science. And he was just like, if you think that's hard, you should try this. And I was like, watch me. And so,
was there any like coding clubs or coding activities in your, like when you were in school?
So not until I got to high school. When I got to high school, I did take computer science classes, and I did FIRST robotics as well. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. But it's a robotics competition for high school students. I believe you can join from starting at grade 9. And I really enjoyed doing that. And yeah.
That's awesome. What did you go to school for when you graduated, or like tell me more about your journey getting into tech?
Yeah, so in high school, I was definitely very conflicted about what I wanted to do. I found I had like a bunch of different interests, and super excited about tech and like programming, and was also super excited about like biology and the sciences. I knew I hated English. That was like the one known. And so going into something arts related was not on my radar. And I ended up going to Carleton for biomedical and electrical engineering.
Wow.
Which is a lot more hardware based. So it's like building circuits, building heart rate monitors, learning how your body's electrical impulses work, that sort of thing. And like building medical devices is essentially what I studied. And then ended up getting a job as a software developer. And here we are.
Was it pretty competitive getting into your program?
I had pretty high marks, so I don't actually remember.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I want to say that the program that I went into, I think, was about as competitive as the rest of the engineering programs, maybe a little less so than some of the other ones at Carleton, because I know Carleton is well known for its aerospace program. But yeah.
Great. Cool. I'm just looking at the questions we have on the Q&A. Samantha Colony asks, I am a grade 7-8 teacher, and I'm curious as to what advice you would give to students considering a career path in tech.
That's a good question. I would say encourage them as much as possible and point them to online resources. I find like nowadays, there's lots out there. I learned a lot through the internet. Most of my development knowledge came through finding a bunch of like random YouTube channels. I know, say a good one that I can think of off the top of my head is Derek Banez. I think that's his name. He has a bunch of different tutorials on development, well, all sorts of things really, but he does have like a whole bunch of different development tutorials. I think the thing that really got me into this was just finding little projects that I found really interesting, and that I found like really motivated me to learn. It wasn't just like learning for the sake of learning, it was like learning because I wanted to accomplish a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey guys, my video isn't working for some reason, so I'll quickly, this happened last time with Kamiko, so I just have to refresh my computer and it'll
No
work.
worries, Janat. We're actually live right now, so feel free to pop in a little bit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next question we have is, what do you do as a developer at Shopify?
So I am a back-end developer, which means I write code that happens sort of behind the scenes than what you would see. So for those of you that don't know, Shopify is an e-commerce platform. And so essentially we help people start their own online business. So if you go to Shopify and you have like a business idea in mind, you can go, and Shopify is a platform that'll help you put your business online and create an online store. So as a backend developer, I write a bunch of the code that's sort of behind the scenes from what you see on the web page. So like when you navigate to a web page, there is a whole bunch of infrastructure that helps the page run, I guess, and controls like the way it functions and like the things that it can do. And so, yeah, I write a bunch of code. But also as a developer, it's not very, I feel like there's this like stereotype of like, oh, I'm sitting alone in my room, just like typing a bunch of code and staring at a screen all day long. Staring at a screen all day long is kind of true, especially now that like all of our meetings are online. But I find that a lot of development is also talking to people and designing and figuring out what the best way of architecting something is. So like figuring out how you want to build the thing. A lot of that is what I do on a day-to-day, is like figuring out how to build the thing and working with other people on my team to figure out the best way of doing the thing.
That's so cool. That's really cool, because I do know that there's front-end development and then back-end development. So let me know why you decided to go back-end versus front-end, or for the people in the room, maybe you can tell us the difference between the two, or like, I know that there's also full stack, which is like, I think both. So yeah, if you could explain that more, that'd be great.
Yeah, so you kind of hit that on the nail. Full stack is like you are working across the whole stack. We tend to call, I guess, the way web applications work a stack. So the front end is essentially what your users would see. So it's the way the page is styled, the like things that you would see, the buttons that you can interact with, the text boxes you can interact with, like all of the things that you see on a web page is sort of the front end stuff. And then all of the stuff that's kind of behind the scenes that like hooks all of the functionality together. So for example, if you had like a form and then you type some information into the form, sort of the wiring that goes on behind the scenes to like take that information stored in a database or do whatever you need to do with that information, that's all backend development. When I first started working, I was actually a full stack developer, so I did all of the things. And I ended up working on a lot of projects. I was at a different company at the time. And when I was there, most of the work that I ended up doing was front end related. And I found that I really didn't like designing things. I'm terrible at designing things. Like making things look nice was just not my forte.
It's not a logical approach, because I like coding is very logical. It's like right or wrong, black. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so I found that like little things like, how do I make sure that this button looks right in Chrome versus Internet Explorer versus Firefox really bothered me. And it was not the kind of problem that I wanted to solve. And then so when I joined Shopify, I ended up joining as a backend developer, which has a whole whole other set of problems. So it's like a completely different problem space, and I'm finding that really interesting. I find that like I have interests in all kinds of things, and I'm really lucky in the sense that like I find that as a developer, there's really this notion that like to be a good developer, you need to, people are always learning, and there isn't really a stigma behind like not knowing. And so people are always learning, you're always encouraged to learn, and you're always encouraged to like try new things, which I think is really cool. So a backend developer now, I could be a mobile developer, I could switch to front end. I feel like it's all really interchangeable, and they'll provide different problems, I guess.
I was going to ask too, what does your typical day look like being a backend developer? Because I know you're working a lot on the back end, but there's so much that goes on in the back end. So yeah, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I guess my day, I like to start really early. I am a morning person, so I will log on to work. I guess now in the digital world, I just roll out of bed and then walk over to my laptop, so I don't have my morning commute anymore. But when I do log on to work, usually I'll spend like the first part of my day going through all of the notifications that I had missed. So like the bazillion and two Slack notifications that I got overnight, or emails. And then I spend a good chunk of time doing code reviews. So usually when you're a developer, you're working on a team. So you're going to be working with other people who are also writing code. And when you're working on something, usually before it goes into the main code base or into production, you'll want other people to review your code. So you'll want other people to look at it, maybe find the edge cases that you didn't think about, or present different ways of solving the problem, because there's often many different ways of solving the problem when you're writing code. And so yeah, usually I'll spend the first part of my morning just like looking through what we call pull requests, which are, I guess, the ways that we submit code to go into the code base. So I'll go through those and review them, add my comments. A lot of the times learn a whole bunch of new things just by reading how other people write code. And then usually after that, more people will start logging on. And so I'll have like a chat with some folks. And then usually I'll like get into whatever feature or bug or problem that I'm trying to solve. So like I'll start coding at that point. If I have any questions, I'll like go and bug people. That happens a lot. Like I'll jump into a Slack channel or something, be like, hi, I'm lost, somebody please help me. And I also spend, my team spends a good chunk of our time like pair programming, which I find is really cool. So what that means is we'll have two people working on the same problem. So me and one of my coworkers, we will get on a call and someone will share their screen, and one person will be the driver. And so that means that they're going to be the one typing the code, and the other person is sort of the navigator. And so they'll be like telling you where to go and what lines of code to write. And I find that really helpful, because then you have another person to like think the problem through with, right? You can bounce ideas, and then so usually when they like talk through the problem, you end up finding new and creative ways of solving the problem, and then and then you write the solution, hopefully, or you keep banging your head against the problem.
Yeah, that's so cool. I used to actually work in tech myself before I started Hackergal, but the one thing that I thought was really cool is doing demos as your team, like showcasing the code that you do. So I'm wondering, like at a huge like Shopify, how often do you do demos?
Oh, very often. One of our, I guess, principles is like, do things, tell people. And that's a huge thing at Shopify, is like, you're like encouraged to show what you do, and to tell people what you do, because usually when you tell people, that sparks discussion, and other people will learn from what you've done, and you will also learn from them about what they think of your solution and that sort of thing. So on my team specifically, I think we have what we call a show and tell every 2 weeks or so, where we'll all get on a giant Google Meet now. Used to be piled into a meeting room, but now it's a giant Google Meet. and we'll all share what we worked on in the last 2 weeks, whether it be like a new feature we wrote or this like really weird bug that we found, or for those of us that are not developers, but like in UX, maybe what designs they're working on, or what research people have found. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. There are a couple of questions and I'm going to go through them right now. For backend developing, do you use SQL or something else?
We do use SQL.
Can you explain what that is? Because I don't know.
Okay, so SQL is I don't even know what it stands for. But essentially you use it to talk to a database. So if you have a database of information, it's the way you will talk to a database to get the information out. So if I had a bunch of tables about like what shops we had and let's say how many orders that shop has, if I wanted to get that information, then in my program, I would then write an SQL query that would go query the database. So essentially, it's a statement that you would write to ask the database, like, hey, how many orders has this shop made? And then it would go pull that information, and then I can continue writing the program around the information that I get on the database. So yes, I do use SQL.
Cool. Great answer, because I had no idea what SQL meant. What age did you start your career?
Career.
Maybe how long have you worked how long have you been coding, perhaps?
Ooh, okay. I have been coding since 7th grade, which is a while now. But I like didn't start professional programming, I guess, until I graduated university. And so that was 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And fun question, this isn't one on live, but how many languages do you know coding?
Programming languages?
Yes, programming languages.
Ooh, okay. Fluently, or like, yeah, I can kind of stumble my way through it.
You could code, you could figure things out. You know, you don't have to know it too well, but I'm always curious how many programming languages a developer knows, because that's so cool to me. Each are so different, but so similar at the same time.
Yeah. I always find that one really hard to nail down, because it's like, I find that once you understand sort of the logical thinking that goes into development, the language just then becomes syntax, which I can never remember anyways. And so I just Google. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. So on a day-to-day basis, I write in Ruby as a backend developer at Shopify. So we use Ruby on Rails. I have worked a lot in TypeScript, which is kind of like JavaScript for those of you who know JavaScript. I've also done C# and a bit of C and Python. So I'd say those are the ones that I'm like,
okay.
Yeah, I kind of know.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Next question is, do you need physics for tech?
Ooh, it depends on what kind of tech you're doing. As a software developer, no. I think unless you are doing, I guess, things that are like graphics related, you might need some physics knowledge, just to like make things look realistic, I guess. But
I agree. Yeah, I do agree. I think it depends on what type of tech, because I'm thinking like maybe biotech or like, you know, things like more sciencey industries will require physics, but
yeah,
generally speaking, right?
Yeah, like I know some folks that like work, so because I graduated with biomedical and electrical engineering, I know a bunch of folks that are sort of in the medical field that do like medical devices and that sort of thing. And I feel like maybe people who are working with physical devices might need more physics knowledge. But I would say that like the stuff that you really need, you will kind of learn as you go on. Right. I've never been too hung up on like what it is I actually know, if that makes any sense.
So true.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think one thing now, like having worked in tech and now working in Hackergal, you continuously learn so much along the way. Like if you ask me, do I remember what I learned in university and do I apply it? I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Like everything is just changing so fast in terms of like approaches or models and things like that. So I agree. Like you get into your career, it's such a learning curve.
Yeah, for sure. Like when I got my first job, I did not know anything about web development. I'd never done web development before. I remember going through the interview and they were like, oh, have you done this, that, and the other thing? And I'm like, no. And I don't know, they still hired me anyway. And I learned on the job. Like I learned everything that I know just on the job, just like pairing with other people. So working with other people, asking lots of questions. Just not being afraid to ask questions either to my coworkers or to Google. There's lots of Googling that happens.
Yes.
And yeah, even like, so I worked for 2 years at that company and then got a job at Shopify and the same thing happened. They're like, hey, do you want to work in Ruby on Rails? I'm like, I've never done that before. And they're like, cool, you can do it. And I learned on the job. So it's like, what I really like about tech is that like, there is this real push to like, it's okay to not know, and everybody is constantly learning and you can learn from anyone, which I think is really cool.
I love it. That's great advice. We always say that too, is like ask questions, bet on yourself. Always don't be scared to ask the questions when you don't know, because technology is such a growing industry. There's so many new approaches, like I mentioned, and it is a male dominated industry. So you really have to just own it, own that you don't know and ask those questions. So thank you for saying that, Miriam. We have a really good question. How has your job changed since the pandemic, or has it?
It has changed. So I have learned that I do not like working from home. I know there are people that love being at home all the time. I am not one of those people. I was definitely a person that was out of the house most of the time. And so before I used to work in an office. So I would take the bus to work. I live in the suburbs of Ottawa and would take the bus downtown. If you haven't seen the Shopify offices before, like Google them, they were pretty, we had like a slide in our office, we had food, it was fantastic, life was great. And now I work out of my basement, it's fine.
Well, fine. We're all working from home. One thing I will say for the people on the line, Shopify is one of Canada's largest tech companies. They do amazing work. I don't know, Maryam, if you want to quickly shout out Shopify for for what you guys do, because I know a lot of people just jumped on a little bit later too. So if you want to quickly go over it, I'm not sure if everyone knows, but they are one of Canada's babies in tech, like reborn tech company.
Yeah, we like to call ourselves the entrepreneurship company. And so we want people to build a successful business of their own. And we help them in any way that we can, and in the way that we know how. And so for us, that's tech. And so we have a online e-commerce platform. And so what that means is that like, if you have a business idea, you have a bunch of things that you want to sell, you just got into like making something and you want to sell that to the world. Or like you just decided to bake a bunch of cookies and everyone loves your cookies. And so now you want to sell it to everybody. You can go online and go to Shopify and create an online store. And we hopefully make it really, really easy for you to get that store up and running without having to worry about like, oh, how do I run a website? How do I like put it all together? And so we help over 1 million merchants hold their store online and hopefully sell things to people that need it.
Great. And this is worldwide, right? Not just
Yeah, it is worldwide. It is always really cool to see. So recently we just hit our like busiest shopping season. Black Friday and Cyber Monday just get like really crazy. And so Shopify had this like, we put out this globe for people to watch all of the orders going in and out during that busy shopping weekend, and it was like mind-blowing to see. I think like I sometimes forget how much people shop, even working in this space, but just to see like the amount of shopping that's happening, and just like all of these amazing and creative people that have like created a business for themselves, is always really cool to see and really inspiring because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, and I'm sure you see such cool products from around the world too.
Yeah.
Different cultures, perspectives. That's something that we spoke about earlier in Hackergal Day, is really like amplifying different perspectives and what makes us unique and what makes us different from others. So I think that's one really cool thing I would say about Shopify is you do have access to a whole bunch of countries and like what their culture is like. So that's super cool. What was it easy to find a job after you graduated school?
I think in software, it is really easy to find a job after graduation. I have found that like, no matter what, I guess, what industry you end up in, every industry right now really needs software developers, right? Regardless of what it is that you do,
Right.
Everybody is now working on a computer, right? Like everybody has some need for a computer in some way, shape, or form, right? Like we all go on our phones every day. There are so many apps out there. There's a developer who made that app, right? You get onto your computer, you get onto your Mac, whatever it is that you use. Somebody created all of these pieces of software that we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. Even like little things like your email or like this Zoom meeting, like there was a developer behind that who was writing all the code to make sure that it runs. And so I find that like more so now, all of these different industries are trying to get online, right? Especially since we've all moved to remote work. A bunch of people have like scrambled to get online, and there is a greater need for developers. And I don't think we've met that need or even come close to it. And so I think if you really like learning and you really like logical thinking, I feel like this is an amazing field to be in right now. There's just so many problems and so much opportunity.
100% agree. What was your experience been in regards to inclusion and being taken seriously by your peers, especially being a woman in tech? Did you have any challenges or did you face any challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I feel like I work on an amazing team right now. I used to have a female lead, which was fantastic. Like it was so, I don't know, I was so happy. But also like, I feel like everybody should have that. Like that shouldn't be a one-off thing that I'm like, oh, I'm so surprised. But yeah, right now I work on a fantastic team and I definitely don't find problems. But I know that there are people who have definitely faced some problems being the only female on a team. In other places that I've worked, I have seen it myself as well, where being on a project, like being a lead on a project, sometimes people don't realize that that like it's you that is the lead and not your male coworker sitting beside you. So I haven't had instances where people will like direct the question to my coworker rather than me, even though it's me that's working on the project. But I find that like sometimes it's unintentional, like they don't really mean to do it. And it's just like a hidden bias that they haven't realized yet. And so sometimes just being patient and like working with them, maybe like pulling them outside after the meeting and just saying like, hey, I noticed that like, you forgot to include me in the meeting. Yes. Maybe next time. It'd be great. So that there is some ways to go, but I feel like it like we really need that diversity and we need that difference in perspective that everybody brings, right? Like everybody has a very unique path, and that is going to lend itself to different solutions to different problems, and we need that diversity.
For sure. I 100% agree. And this is what Hackergal is all about in terms of encouraging more girls to get into this field, because it is such a growing field. There's so much opportunity. And you can work for such amazing companies like Shopify that are making such a difference in the world. And when we talk about technology, Maryam, we always talk about how the beauty of tech is that it really provides solutions to your everyday problems, to big world problems. Even thinking about just the general apps that we use every day, to Uber, to Shopify, selling, your homemade art crafts or whatever to the world. It's wonderful what tech can do. So there is a lot of opportunity in tech and in code, and that is the future. So thank you for mentioning that. We have time for one more question. And of course, Maryam, if you're able to stick around, you can answer the questions on the Q&A using the text. But the last question I'd like to bring up to you is, what programming languages can you work with? Describe your experience with them, and how do you approach so a couple questions in one. How do you approach high pressure situations when everything goes wrong? And you know, with code, it is a lot of problem solving. So I can imagine it doesn't always work on the first time. So
it never works on the first try.
So please tell us more about, your experiences with different code, and how do you approach high pressure situations when things go wrong?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is making sure that I feel like I'm working in a team that is supportive enough, so that I feel supported and I feel like I can accomplish anything. And when things go wrong, they'll have my back. So that for me is huge. When looking for a job, that was like the number one thing. I needed to be with people that I felt comfortable with, and people that I felt supported by. So I wanted to make sure that like I could ask stupid questions, that I could ask for help, and not feel afraid of, I don't know, someone thinking like, oh, how did she get hired? She doesn't know anything. And not feeling that stigma was really important to me. And so now if like when things go wrong, which things always go wrong, I know that I can turn to my team and be like, hi, I need some help, and I like really need help getting this done, or I can't solve this thing and I need a second pair of eyes. Because sometimes you just need that like person to talk to. And I think remembering that like we are not in a field as individuals, and that like we are really working as a team and working together, is really empowering to me. And it really does help when things go sideways, because I find, when things work the first time around, I'm very suspicious. Because like it shouldn't be that easy. It never is.
Yeah. Totally, 100%. And I feel like all of the tech that's created was created by so many different people. It wasn't just one person. And sometimes it can be one person, but when you bring minds together, so much more can happen, or smart minds. So thank you for reminding us for that. Maryam, that is all the time what we have today for Ask Me Anything. Thank you so much for joining us today, for your honesty, and for sharing your story with us. Please feel free to jump on the Q&A and I know that there's a couple of questions that we can get a chance to answer. So yeah, feel free to type your questions in there.
Yeah, for sure. I will hunt through the Q&A and answer as many questions as I can. Awesome. And if you ever want to reach out, I don't know, am I allowed to give up my email?
Yes, for sure, please. Yeah.
Yeah. I like, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to give out my email. Just like send me a little message either here through the Zoom chat, and I will send you my email. I'm always happy to talk some more. I love talking about tech and what I do, because I think it's amazing and I think everybody should do it. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Maryam. Yes, please private message her on the chat, and she will reach out to you and tell you the best way to connect. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Next up, I'm excited to introduce Janat for our coding project showcase. Janat is currently a grade 12 student in Toronto, Ontario. After going through a variety of workshops and programs and participating in Hackergal's hackathon program at her local school, Janat was exposed to the world of tech and instantly fell in love with it. Today, she'll be sharing her own coding journey and a project she coded with Hackergal's Launchpad curriculum. So I'll pass the floor over to you, Janat.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much. Like the conversation we were having, like with Miriam and Lucy, it was so amazing. And yeah, so let's start off. So hi guys, my name is Janat. I'm currently a grade 12 student sitting in Toronto, Ontario. And a bit about me is that I love coding. And first of all, I'll be talking about my coding journey and how I got involved with Hackergal. So I first started coding when I was in grade 10, and it was through a computer science course I took. And throughout the course, I was exposed to programming and coding, and I just loved the ability to use my creativity and problem-solving skills in the programs I made. And so even after the class ended, I still continued to self-teach myself some code. And as of right now, I've taught myself HTML, CSS, and a bit of JavaScript, and also the Lynx coding platform as well. Like I've gotten myself familiar to that as well. And if you have been to any of Hackergal's hackathons, you might have noticed that we use links as the coding platform to write all of our projects in. So that's a bit about my coding journey. And when it comes to me being involved with Hackergal, I was first an attendee at one of their hackathons. And in the hackathons, I was exposed to everything tech and surrounded by such ambitious people who loved coding and shared their passion with code. And I just remember having such a good time at their hackathon that I really wanted to be further involved with the organization. So I applied as a cooperative student and in grade 11. And then I got the role of a cooperative student. I worked for about 6 months as a cooperative student. And then later I became an ambassador at Hackergal. And I'm currently working as ambassador right now, working to inspire and encourage other young girls to explore coding and the fields of tech. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far. So that's a bit about me, how I first got involved with coding and how I got involved with Hackergal. So that's enough of me talking about myself. So now we're going to be talking about my coding project, which is called Meet the Developer. And I'll try to share my screen right now to see if I can show you guys about it. All right, so can you guys see it? Okay, perfect. Okay, so as you can see over here, this is my project of Meet the Developer. This is the cover page in which I have the title of Meet the Developer. And this project basically goes over who I am, my passions, my hobbies, and my inspiration. And in this cover page, I have 3 buttons: about me, hobbies, and inspiration, which take you to each page respectively. And yeah, you can see my Bitmoji over here. And first I'm going to give you a brief overview of my project. So we're going to click on the About Me button. So let's see where this takes us. All right, so as you can see over here, this moving scroll, this is the About Me page. Let's click on this scroll right over here. All right, so my name is Janat and I'm an ambassador at Hackergal. I love everything tech and want other girls to explore the field as well. So that's the About Me page. Let's move on to the other pages. I'm going to be clicking on Hobbies now. Hobbies, all right, clicking on the scroll again. Okay, so my hobbies include sketching, almost anything, coding, reading, and working out, especially during quarantine. You need to be healthy and exercising. So yeah, that's one of the hobbies I have. Now going back to the first page, we're going to talk about inspiration. So this is the page where I talk about my inspiration. So we're going to click on this. All right, so clicking on the moving scroll again. Okay, so for inspiration, a quote that really resonates with me the most and I find really important is, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And that's one of the quotes I love, and I love sharing it with people as well. And about this project, the commands that I used, we'll talk about those in depth later on. And let's go back to the first page. So we've gone through like a brief overview of my project. So now I'll be talking about how I coded this project and some tips and tricks I have for you guys. So we're going to be going to editor mode, which is over here. I'm going to click on this button. It's going to take me to editor mode. Let's see, it's loading. All right, so this is the links workspace where I actually made my project. And the first thing you might notice is the title, Meet the Developer, Janat. That's my title. And this is page number 1. You can use these arrows to move pages. This is page number 2. Okay, moving on to page number 1. All right, so this right over here is called the procedures pane. And we're going to go over like this space very briefly. The procedures pane is basically where you can store your code permanently. And this pane over here, the command center, is where you can store temporary code. And yeah, these are I wrote all my code on the procedures pane. As you can see right over here, the code's in my project about buttons, moving pages, etc. So let's look at the sidebar now. So this icon right over here, the cloud icon, if you click on this, it'll actually save your project for you. So the thing with links is that it doesn't automatically save your progress. So it's very important to always click on this after you're done, or else you'll lose everything, which happened to me once because I forgot to save it. So definitely a tip for everyone using the language, links, and the platform, definitely remember to save. And now, secondly, this is the gear icon. So if I click on this, you'll see all these buttons over here. So what do? So I'll be unclicking the dark mode. So this basically allows you to switch from light mode to dark mode. This is light mode, but I prefer the darker mode, so I'm going to click on dark mode. And then we have different fonts, and these fonts aren't really for your project like this, but they're rather for your code. So you can decrease the font. You can see my fonts is decreased now. I'll increase it because I want you guys to actually see my code clearly. And yeah, so another tip I'd give you guys using this platform is always turn on learner mode. When I first was starting off with this language of links, like learner mode really helped me and gave me tips on the side. So that was really, really helpful. So if you guys really need, or if you guys are beginners, like I would totally recommend this. So that's the gear button. And now I'm going to be moving on to the book icon. So the cool thing about this is it opens up a tab which allows you to learn more about the Links coding language. And it talks about turtles and graphics, and all this stuff might seem confusing if you're new. So if you go here and click on these various buttons, it'll take you and talk about different commands. And if you're wondering what a turtle is basically something you can manipulate with your code. So you can use various commands to change the shape of your turtle, the size, the color. And if you've noticed, on the About Me page, right over here, this scroll is actually a turtle. And if you click on this, it'll actually open the scroll up. So this scroll is actually a turtle. And you might be wondering how I actually got it to move towards the left side. So I'm going to be talking about a command called set heading. I'm going to zoom in right over here. I'm going to highlight it, T12 set heading 270. So T12 is the name of my turtle, aka the scroll. And set heading is the command that basically allows you to change the direction of your turtle. So right over here, as you have noticed before, my scroll is moving from the right towards the left. And I was able to do that through the set heading command. And another thing, you might be wondering, what's this huge number, 270? Well, 270 basically corresponds with the direction. So this is like the angle. So if you want your turtle to move towards the west, it'd be 270, it'd be 360 or 0 degrees if you want it to move towards the north, and then 90 for the east and 180 for the south. And for me, in my case, it was towards the west, so I chose 270. Okay, so that's a bit about the code I used and the command of set heading that really helped me to move the scrolls in my project, and aka the turtles. The scrolls are the turtles. And yeah, and throughout this project, we talked about a brief overview. And another tip I'd like to give you guys, if you guys are going to make cool projects and stuff, I would say use the website Pixlr. It's Pixlr. And this was the website I used to create all the graphics for my project, my Bitmoji, the fonts I use, how I designed the buttons, the pages, everything was used through the website. They have amazing tools, and they're really, really helpful and easy to learn with. So if any of you guys want to check it out, I totally recommend it. And yeah, so that's the end of my project and the brief overview of my project. And I will stop sharing my screen. And yeah, so that's the brief overview of my project. And if you guys want to learn more about links and about computer science and coding, I would definitely recommend you guys to head over to the Hackergal Hub, in which you'll learn about all these cool things. If you want to create your own project, just like mine's, of Meet the Developer, you can head over to Hackergal Hub, and I'll show you step by step all the other commands I've used and the links coding platform and all of that. So yeah, definitely looking forward to what you guys create and how you use your creativity in this. It was a super fun project. It took me about 2 to 3 days to make. Learned a ton, had a great time, and yeah, if you guys do make it, I'm looking forward to your projects. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Janat. It's always so cool seeing the projects that the girls in our program made, especially from going from our hackathon to now coding as part of our ambassador program. So thank you so much for sharing your coding project. If anyone has questions for Janat, please submit them in the Q&A, and she will go ahead and answer those questions for you on the Q&A function. So that wraps up our Meet the Developer and Coding Project Showcase breakout room. Please continue to engage on the chat for a couple more minutes. We are going to jump back into the live event at 2:25. So I'm going to actually copy and paste the link back into the live room in the chat. So everybody, if you want to click there, I just sent it. To everyone. Please join us back on Hackergal Day in the live events. We have an exciting announcement that we're going to share to close off the day. Thank you so much, everyone.